Locking the Golden Cage. I am here today with Gunnar Madsen, who was the very first person who, watch out, Gunnar, cut it out. So, Gunnar was the very first person to ever play the role of Boris. And actually, you weren't. You actually were the second because Robert Sickler ended up doing it first.
I was
What?
wondering about that.
Oh my goodness. I'm going to have to send you away and bring him. But even though Robert was the first one to do it, and I don't know why, if you got sick or something, but you were the inspiration. I built the character on you. Seriously. And so this is Gunnar Madsen, my great friend, and we are here to talk about the first iteration of the Golden Cage, which was called Dream of Waking. And I actually have the original poster here. So I'll pull that up. Now, The Golden Cage is my musical that I have just released into the world and streaming musicals. And we have this right here. We can actually, so people who are coming here, you can click on that QR code. Of course, and I think probably the link is in the post as well. So the musical it is new, but we did it long ago, and I can see someone scanned that. Yay! That's great. It's wonderful. It's so wonderful to have you here. So for people who are here, I want you to know that on some of the platforms we actually can see your chats. On some of the platforms we aren't, and we're streaming on a bunch of different platforms. We'll pull this up again, but let me go back and get rid of that. Let me go back and remove that design. I don't know how. I can do it. No, I really can. Wait. Under. Who? Oh, we have a magical person here. Okay, great. All right. So, Gunnar, what?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm just going to pull up a couple of pictures because I think it might be helpful for people to see. So, The Golden Cage is a two-person musical. It is a story that it came into my head when I was very young, when I was about 19. I went back to school. I went to UC Berkeley to learn to read and write music because I don't know if you knew this, Gunnar, but I did not know how to read and write music when I started writing the story.
Okay. And I didn't know how to read or write music before I went to UC Berkeley.
Oh, interesting. So what made you, why did you go to UC Berkeley? To learn to read and write music, right?
I love music.
Uh-huh.
I grown up with the Beatles, seen them on the Ed Sullivan Show. Before then, I was just a typical kid who kind of liked this and that, but didn't care about anything. And when I saw the Beatles, I cared so much that it was just everything. But I didn't know that you could, I didn't come from a musical family, and we didn't have, so they got up like a piano teacher, and she taught me to read little simple things that didn't sound anything like the Beatles. I gave up after a year. I said, this is ridiculous. But it wasn't. Then in high school, my sister had a guitar, and she went away for the summer and left her guitar behind. And guitar, if you've ever looked at a guitar chords, they have these little chords. It shows exactly where to put your fingers. And all of a sudden you're playing a song by Neil Young or somebody like that. And I was just like, wow, it showed you how to move your fingers and make music without notes and everything. So I started just figuring that out. I took it to the piano and figured out that the piano had chords as well. And I just taught myself. And then, I got so into it. My mom was really frustrated with all my banging at the piano.
Uh-huh.
So she gave me lessons when I was 17. And it was classical because that's the only person we knew that gave lessons. But I was into it then. And that got me into Berkeley. I played well enough that I could get into Berkeley. But, I didn't know that you could sight sing or anything.
Right.
So really, I was just there to learn all the basics.
That's so interesting. I didn't realize that about you. I assumed you grew up learning that you knew how to read music. I wonder how many of us there were there who actually were, we were learning as we were there. And it's so great what you say about pictures, because that is how I teach the harp. I don't teach it with pictures, but it's all about patterns and learning from patterns and being able to find music from patterns rather than coming from notes.
Yes, and notes are fantastic. They're a beautiful thing because then you can communicate with others what you want to have happen. But for me, music is constructed of these patterns,
Gunnar, we
like
really need to
chords.
talk about this. We need to get on a different stream and talk about.
Yeah, because this
Yeah.
isn't about. Have we even said Boris yet?
No, we
No.
haven't said Boris. But here's what's wonderful. I mean, here we've known each other and been, best friends like all our life, and never talked about, like, why were we in the place that we were in when we met, and how much we have in common. How much we have in common now, which is great. Okay, so for anyone who's joining us or who's been with us, Gunnar was the inspiration for the first Boris of the Golden Cage, and Gunnar and I went on tour. Well, so originally the play was done at UC Berkeley, and then a director friend of mine came and said, I want to produce this show. And I had written it for you. I mean, for you, I had written it for us to do together. And this is just a thing I did, like if I had a friend like Celeste, I made her be my musical partner, and it was like I was going to write a show for us because this is how we were going to spend time together. And so we produced this show, and we did it in Berkeley at a little theater. We rented a theater, we did the show there, and then we took it on tour to the Point Reyes Dance Palace and maybe even one other place.
Yes.
Yeah. So
Yes.
So I would love to hear. Let me just show a picture. So people, I actually have pictures of us doing this, and so I want to just show those, and then I would love to hear what you have to say about this. So this is a picture of you and I as Boris and Alfia in our costumes, which I'm pretty sure I sewed and put together. This is a picture of you in the original Boris costume, which was that was made out of a spoon and some eyeglasses and some feathers. This was our official publicity photo. And this was my sketch for what I thought Boris should look like. That was just my original sketch. And this was my original sketch for what I thought Alfia should look like.
Yes.
And then this was sort of my original, how I saw them meeting, and I saw the Golden Cage. So Gunnar, I would just love to hear you. I would love to figure out how to I get this off. Okay. What was this experience like for you? What do you remember about it?
So all I know about myself back then, I'd never studied theater, and I'd been in, let's see, I had like this beautiful high voice in high school. So I got cast in a community production of Cabaret as the young Nazi boy that sings Tomorrow Belongs to Me.
Plus you were,
so I was really,
you were like totally blonde, like blonde to the, okay. So
yeah, it's typecasting, right. I tell you. But anyway, that was my only experience with being on stage, but I always loved being the center of attention somehow. And I really had no experience acting or anything. And then you said, hey, let's do this show. And because it was you, and because I had this sense of like, yeah, I can be the center of attention. Let me do it. I just did it. And I was thinking about this today when what was it you said? When you said I was the very first Boris, which we have since figured out is not quite true. But at any rate, it was like, wow, I knew nothing about acting. And yet, because I was with you, I think it made it really comfortable for me to learn while doing it, kind of.
Well,
it was also, just so, because I trusted you.
Oh, well, thank you. I also literally built the character on you, on your personality. And I literally built their relationship in some ways on our friendship and how we might enjoy, engaging and playing together. But I do remember one moment when you were doing something, I can't remember what it was. And I said, Gunnar, can you just act like you? And you were like, no, I must act. And I was like, but the character is you. Please just be you. Do you happen to remember that?
I do. And it wasn't until years later, after I had been in the Bobs and done, much more performing and on stage. And I went to an acting coach who was really well considered and everything. I said, yeah, I know how to act. And he said, no, can you just, where are you? And when he asked or demanded that of me, I was like, what do you mean? I'm right here. But I heard you say it, and I just never knew how to be myself. And it took years of method acting training before I could finally just arrive as myself on a stage and not feel, not always be trying to escape myself in a way.
Wow. Wow. So what
So
was that?
I enjoyed all my years on stage were great. I'm not,
Yeah.
no regrets or anything. And I did find truth even without knowing how to get there. But when it came time to really act and be in plays and stuff, it was like, oh, I had so much more to learn and about how revealing myself in ways that I wasn't quite comfortable with. So,
Wow.
and it's amazing, like I say, working with you, trusted you, a lot came out then. Even though I didn't have the tools in which to, get even further, it was like, I think I did a pretty good job. But yeah,
I
when you
mean, we had
wanted more,
fun.
it's like,
Yeah. Oh,
oh,
well,
it's
yeah.
tons of fun. Yeah, yeah. But it's
Yeah.
like, just be yourself. It's like, oh, I don't even know where that is, honey.
Oh.
And just from a technical standpoint, am I moving on your screen?
Yeah. Am I moving on your
Okay, good.
screen?
Yeah, my picture froze about 2 minutes ago, and I'm going,
Oh,
well, as long as other people can see me, I don't need to see me. That's fine.
you know you can move. Wow. So,
Uh,
and I remember, I mean, this is probably classic that everybody, has stories like this in theater. I remember we were doing the show one night and somebody said something, I think there's a line, here I am inside the palace. I don't know whether it was you or me. And whoever it was said, here I am inside the callus. And it was it doesn't even sound funny now, but it was just one of those moments when I just remember I could not, it was so painful to, I felt like I was going to laugh and I was going to lose it. And I don't suppose you remember that part. Probably not.
I don't, but I know that situation where, doing a play or a movie, and it's just like, I don't know, working with someone who's very funny, but my character's not supposed to laugh.
Oh.
And yeah, in fact, there was one movie once where I was trying so hard to just not laugh. And whatever it was that was on my face, the director, because everything is done on, you can watch it on video and everything. And the director and the producer were looking at it going like, oh, wow, that guy's really got it. And I'm going, all I'm doing is trying not to laugh. And, but they thought it was so expressive. So it's like, okay,
Aha.
whatever.
Wow. So Gunnar, so the Golden Cage was your big break in the world. Not really.
Eh,
And it was, yeah, and it was called Dream of Waking then. And there was a lot the story was a lot the same, but there's a lot different now. Todd, can you just talk about what happened in your life after that? I mean, you created the Bobs, and then you've done acting, and then you've done music for video games. I mean, just talk about
so,
you for a minute.
okay. So getting to Berkeley was, we discussed that, like, it was quite something to be there with all these people who had studied, violin since the age of 5 and could take 4-part dictation and played an instrument really well. And I was just like floundering through learning to read music, and I'm still not great at it. But my
Usually,
ears
yeah.
work great, and I found that I just loved composing, and so many things just helped lead me in directions. So where was I? In high school, I knew I wanted to be like in a group like the Beatles, but didn't know how to make that happen because I didn't even know how to play an instrument. But then I also thought I could write commercials. I thought, wow, I could write like for Coca-Cola, all that stuff, and make $1 million, and then I can go do whatever the heck I want. So that was my thought, high school into college. And but what happened was there was a professor, our dear Professor John Swackhammer, who
Uh-huh.
who said, "Do you know anything about theater?" And I said, "Well, I was in a production of Cabaret in high school." He said, "Good
Mhm.
enough. Here," and he gave me a score to a Bertolt Brecht Hans Eisler musical, and he said, "There's a guy that's directing this and wants to produce it, and he needs a music director. I think you could do it." And I went, I had no idea how to do it, but I was so good at and this is something you helped teach me too, saying yes.
Mm,
Just if you opportunity comes, you just say okay. And
yeah.
so I said yes. I met this director. He was kind of a different guy, but the play we put on, and what was it? You helped me find like the French horn player,
I
and
did.
you did. There was a guy. He used to play up in Reno and Vegas in the shows there and stuff. I don't remember his name. And there was another guy who played all the reed instruments, and he was a dedicated leftist uh, kind of guy who wanted to do this Brecht play because it was leftist and in his wheelhouse. And I was like, okay, so I had two great people in the orchestra, and then some other people, and I got together a bunch of people from the choir at UC Berkeley, and they were the choir, and I wrote for French horn and saxophone, and I forget what the other instruments were. It was just this weird ensemble, but it's all I had. And writing all that stuff, I learned so much, which led to the play ended up being a huge success. And then I got invited to be the music director for the Bertolt Brecht study of theater in Berkeley. And then from that, I got a offer from the Berkeley Shakespeare Festival to write for their season. And so all of a sudden I was doing theater. And it was like, okay, I didn't see it coming, but it was great.
Was this before or after we did the Golden Cage?
Probably around the same time all this stuff was going on.
Interesting. Yeah. Wow. It's so interesting that there was there are these people like John Swackhammer, who was such a huge influence on everybody who he came across. I mean, so here's this guy who was just what an adjunct professor at Berkeley, probably. I mean, I don't.
Yes, he wasn't one of the named professors. Um, like people would say, oh, well, there's the Dr. Joseph Kerman has written the definitive book on so and so. I don't know if Swackhammer ever wrote a book, but it didn't matter. He was a teacher and a great teacher. And I mean, he gave me so much courage and encouragement. And I know he did it for you too.
That's right.
So,
That's right. I mean,
yeah,
I think we had the sense then that, like, whatever we want to do, okay, we're going to do that. And I don't know about you, but I know that I went to UC Berkeley because I had a mission. My mission was I want to learn how to read and write music so that I can finish this musical, so that then we can produce it, and then I can go and then go this. So it was just like I was like, you will teach me and I will learn this stuff. And there was just that sense of like, I'm here to learn this. That was just so exciting.
yes. Yeah, and I didn't have a specific goal like that, but I did have um, the hunger to learn. Because I remember sitting with, I had an advisor. He was a nice guy, but he said, "Well, look here, you've taken all the courses you need for music theory. So yes, I would suggest taking a few other things." And I said, "No, I want to take all the music theory I can. That's what I want." And he was like, "Well, that's not how it's done." I'm like, what kind of attitude is that? I'm hungry. So I followed my own thing and just I studied as much as I could there, and was really I appreciate everything I got from it.
Yeah, and it's funny because I'm thinking back and I'm thinking like anybody who's watching this, what can people get from this story? Here's two friends who, inspired each other, and what does that sound?
There's a I think he's three, maybe three and a half
Uh-huh.
next door, and he is
Is, is he
emulating
dancing?
what his father does, hammering.
Oh, okay. I figured it was either a dog snuffling or it was somebody dancing. Anyway, so in the Golden Cage, Gunnar was the very first person who inspired the character of Boris. And if you're just getting here, you can ask us any questions. We're just talking kind of as two old friends, and talking about what happened in our lives since then. And I'm just curious, Gunnar, like what do you remember of the themes of the Golden Cage? Like, what did you think about that? What did you, aside from the fact that it was I don't know this. Are you sure that child is not a pig? And I don't mean
Wait,
that
could be a
negatively.
woodpecker.
Okay, all right. Um, so now I lost my train of thought. What was I saying?
The
Two friends comes a vision. Okay, so let's just say this. I mean, instead of just hanging out, and I don't know if this was just because I was so physically uncomfortable with people, it never occurred to me to just hang out with people. I don't know that we ever just hung out. I don't really remember us doing that. I think we were always like creating something, or we were making what was that carrot? Oh God. We were making shows.
yes, yes, yes. And I've never been a person to hang out. Like, if I watch some TV show about people that go down to the bar and hang out, it's like, wow, who does that? I'm always interested in doing something. Um, so, and with you, it was so much fun. We wrote some silly game show that we
Right,
put on in the small theater at the music department.
right.
Um,
And we made the mistake. I don't know what made us do this. We decided the theme was Bunny loved carrots. And we gave
oh,
carrots to everyone in the audience, not thinking that they were going to throw them at us at some point, that they would think that that was the appropriate thing to do. And we were making all these jokes about I remember part of the game show, and I just remember we were one of the game show parts was how they suffered. We all know that great
oh,
artists have to suffer in order to actually do their art. But the question is, how do they suffer? How can each of them find their own special way that no one else has ever had to suffer? And the only one I remember, and this is so not funny, really, it's not funny, but this was it. It went like this. How did
okay, yeah. Well,
that's how juvenile we were.
well, the whole thing may have been silly. I remember we had named that croon, and it was
Right.
like I can name that tune in 3 notes, and then I got down to 1 note. 2 notes, 1 note, which is ridiculous. But I remember, I think you were at the typewriter, probably the faster typist, and just pacing around your apartment, and we'd be going. It was just like what was it, the Dick Van Dyke Show, where they would write their
Uh-huh.
jokes and stuff. We're
Uh-huh.
just pacing around, going, no, 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 and then how did that's so great, and you're typing it down. I mean, just the fun of doing all those things. And later on, we wrote not more
We wrote
serious,
the
but
letter.
the letter, yes.
Right.
So an actual musical together where we both wrote songs and
Right.
lyrics and worked together, and it was always just really fun. That was my first experience of collaboration at a deep level, and how fun it can be. Because sometimes it's work as well as good,
Well,
but
and
this was
one
just
of it was like that's what we did for fun. It was interesting about the letter because we did the Golden Cage. We created the Golden Cage called Dream of Waking. And afterwards I thought, well, that was not a perfect musical. So how do we make a perfect musical? And so we decided, or I decided, whatever. Oh my God, I'm just remembering this. We decided we are going to query people. We're going to do this in a scientific way. So the first thing that we did is we pretended that we were reporters. We got a microphone that it was
I
not
forgot
connected.
this.
I'd forgotten it too. It wasn't connected to anything, but we just wanted to find out what is a good title for this show. And I remember one of the titles was The Seamy Side of Love. I don't even remember what all the titles were, but I do remember that. And we walked out. So why is this relevant to anybody else? I don't know. Maybe because it's a way for people to have fun together by creating something together. And we were just always coming up with what's this show? What's the show? So we went out pretending to be reporters, pretending that we had a tape recorder, and went up to people and said, we are, checking out the title for this new show, and it's blah, 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 blah. And here are the 3 titles that we are considering. Which title do you think is best? And then we'd hold the microphone in front of them, and they would tell us what they thought it was. And then we went home and just decided we didn't like whatever they said, and we were going to call it whatever we were going to call it. But then we decided we were going to be really scientific about what were the best songs and what was the best order. and we did a performance of it in somebody's home. Somebody sponsored it. People came. There were 30, 40 people there, and we presented the show. You played the piano, I sang. So in this case, I played the character, and we had people fill out forms about
Uh-huh.
what was
Now
the
I
best.
remember that. Okay.
Yes, and we this was so profound because it had such a big impact on me later on in life. We were like, we're going to find out, we're going to know what is the best material. And I remember us sitting down after that show, and we looked at all those cards. Everyone was completely different.
Yes. Yes.
And they said this, one person said this was the most impactful piece because of this, and the other person said almost exactly the same thing about a different piece. And I just remember looking at that and being, oh my God, maybe that's the difference between science and art.
That's the conclusion we got out of that. For me, was just life changing, even though I've forgotten it until you just mentioned it again. But the whole idea that every opinion is going to be different. And so what? In anything I've done, and you do stuff before an audience and judge by their response, like when you're doing a different set list in a musical group or something, or if it's a piece of art, you share it with people, and only if you get a consistent response about, like, I didn't understand what happened there when that character turned the corner. I really didn't get it. And if that comes up over and over again, it's like, okay, obviously I haven't made that clear. I have more work to do. But otherwise, all the opinions are just wonderful opinions. Please.
I don't know what they're doing. And it's interesting because in the Golden Cage, Boris shoves Althea off a cliff, and this was something. So there were two things that people kept asking me over and over and over again, like that. One was, why does a bird want a cage? I mean, it seemed really obvious to me that if I was a bird, I would want a cage, and like a really cool cage. And there was a song I wanted to write, but sorry, I'm just wondering if maybe you want to go inside, but it's sporadic, whatever. One song I wanted to write was an opening song for Boris that was like, a little bird cage, a little seed, a little newspaper rug on the floor. Who could ask for, like that. Thank God I didn't write that song. I mean, I finally wrote, the heartfelt "I Want" song, but that was a song. Anyway, I think when you did it, there was just a completely different opening. I rewrote the opening and the ending so many times, but the middle of the show stayed the same through the whole time.
Yes. And that's I keep muting the mic to try to. He's just on a roll today.
What is he actually doing? Is he hammering? I see.
Yes, but I don't think he actually has nails. He's just. Yeah. Okay. At any rate, I lost my train of thought. That's all right.
Okay. So all right. Okay. So we went to Berkeley together. Okay. I had a crush on you. That was the first thing that happened. I don't know if you remembered that. Did you remember that?
I remember you asked me out, and
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my God, yes, I remember that. That was so funny. And oh my God. And I remember you said something like, well, what do you think, what does that mean? Like, what do you think you would do what do you think you do on a first date? And I was like, I don't know, I guess you'd have sex. And you were like, I don't know. I think maybe it would be fun to like do something else,
Yes.
And I just had no idea. So I was like, okay, I don't think that's going to work. So then for some reason, I decided it was a really good idea to bring you huge amounts of sheet music that I had found in some ancient, old sheet music. And I remember coming to school with like 5 pounds or 10 pounds of sheet music as a gift. Like, just like, here, Gunnar, here's this. And just remember you looking at me like, I just don't get it. Like, I just don't get why would I want this? And the reason I mean, I don't, I get that this is a public conversation, and yet whatever. I think it's important because it's about finding a friendship. How do you find a friendship? And even if you are a very, very awkward person, as I was, um,
Me too.
as we both were, yeah, um, that that somehow we found our way to become friends, and to become lifelong friends, and to become lifelong musical friends.
Yes, yes, and isn't it interesting too? Like you were are beautiful. Um, but when you said, well, hey, want to go out? I just went like, and I don't know, I don't claim to have special wisdom, but it was just like part of me said, well, but no, that's not what I like about you. That's for some reason it was like, oh no, it wasn't
Yeah,
like, oh, let's not mess up what we have. It was just like, no. And then we just got back to doing all the fun things that we love doing together. And it was
yeah,
really, that's a beautiful moment. And
yeah. And I really didn't know. I I didn't know how to have friends, and I certainly didn't know how to have friends, to be friends with a man. And so but I figured out with Celeste, my other best friend, oh, I can play music with her. I can make a band with her. That's how I can become friends with her. And eventually I figured that out. Oh, Gunnar and I can make music together. We can create things. That's how we can become friends.
yeah, yeah.
And I'm thinking that for other people, the value of this conversation, I'm wondering, is for people who don't know how to make friends, because I bet there are people in the world who don't. And that we could create things together. And maybe that's something that I don't know, I'm thinking, wow, maybe I could still do that. How would I go about doing that? How do we go about doing that in our lives?
Mm, I know it. Through music, I've had various collaborators. In the Bobs, I had a songwriting partner, and we had fun just like you and I do. But because the Bobs were mostly a humorous group, so it was always fun to make each other laugh. But the music was always serious. We wanted the music to just be great. So that collaboration is great because it's a different thing than just friendship of hanging out, and it draws you into a uh, hopefully draws you into a place where you are making room for the other person,
Mm.
and not instead of saying like,
Mm.
well, that's a bad idea, that's not how the song should go at all. Part of that has to happen. You have to say, no, 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 this is the most beautiful part right here. You have to protect what you really do believe is happening, but to make room for other people to come in. And my other big collaborations have involved like a playwright who I didn't think that we connected at all really personally. Now I consider her a good friend. And it was only over years of working on a musical together and building up that trust that, gosh, I got another friend in the world. But as well, the collaboration, I learned so much working with this person because it was like, wow, that took more work than it did with Deborah or
Huh,
Richard.
huh.
But but we made something that was really deep and rich, and I'm extremely proud of. And I got another friend eventually out of it too. And it's like it's all right. So in as a musician, the collaboration can lead to friendship and stuff. I think it could be harder if you don't have projects to work on,
Yeah, and that's interesting
right?
because um, I'm thinking that one of the things, when it was that we wanted to be friends, and that was the way we became friends, rather than we wanted to be collaborators, and that is how we became friends. Sorry, we wanted to be friends, and that's how we became collaborators, versus we wanted to be collaborators, and that's how we became friends.
Right, right.
And
Yeah, because yeah,
right.
for this musical, she approached me. We met in a composer's playwrights workshop.
Mhm.
Um, So she liked the work I did in that workshop. I liked the work she did, but she approached me with this idea, and I went, "Oh, that's a cool idea." So it really was the work that brought us together.
Aha. Oh, that's so interesting. And it's funny when
And
we,
of course, there've been other more. Oh, I was just going to say there
yeah,
have been other collaborations that I'd hoped would work out. A really cool idea, a novel that to make into a musical or something, but if the chemistry doesn't work, we worked on it and it's like a cool idea, but it's like, oh, this is too hard. Sometimes the friendship isn't going to work out, but it's all about having, as a musician who likes collaborating, it brings you in with other people, and sometimes you get a great result artistically, and sometimes you get friendships too,
right.
which is good for me because I'm shy otherwise.
And
Yeah.
yeah, and I'm shy too for friendships, not for, I mean, I love collaboration, but I don't know how to do that. I don't know how to go out
Yeah.
and ask someone to be a friend, and I probably wouldn't because being a my work, I came into this world to do this work. This is what I love. And so I guess it's perfect to have a friendship in which I can do that work. One of the things that's interesting in looking back, I mean, this is Unlocking the Golden Cage, but it's whatever. It is what it is. It's not like we're on a syndicated, whatever. But the musical that we did afterwards, The Letter, we collaborated, and yet we each wrote different songs. We actually didn't collaborate on any of the songs together.
True. Yeah.
And it was interesting because we had such different sensibilities. Like, I remember when we were talking about the character's name, and I said her name is I forgot her name.
Yeah, I
Wait a
can't
minute, it's a
remember.
really important name too. La da da dee da 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 da. La da da da. La da da dee. Starts with an M, I think. La da da dee da da dee. Anyway, it was no, 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 no,
Maria.
no, no, no. But it was a very singable name. Maybe forgettable, but singable. And I remember you saying, "Oh, I think her name is Elizabeth." And I was like, "How are you going to sing Elizabeth?" And yet that is very much your style. Your style is so much more angular, and mine is that, like, oh, Madeline, that's her name. Madeline, Madeline, Madalena. Like,
That's
I want
right.
all these names. Right.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that was fun. I mean, that's so, and we were talking about this last month sometime, where uh, you had written this entire musical, Dream of Waking, Golden Cage, and I've been studying composition, and I'd written for theater and maybe written a song in a piece, but I'd never really written songs before. And it occurs
I
to me
didn't know that.
only now. Oh, it occurs to me only now, looking back. It's like, wow, you were writing lyrics and music. I really was. I was so brand new to that. It was very difficult for me to figure out lyrics and music together. So what you were doing was quite something. And I didn't know who Sondheim was at the time. And now listening
Ah.
to your music, it's like, oh, you were very Sondheimian in a way,
Yeah, I
with
think
the
I had been
beautiful long lines
right. And I think
and
it's
and the
I,
and the way you harmonize things.
and I think
And lyrically, you're very clever.
oh,
Oh,
thank you.
and now you can go.
Now may I speak about myself? Um, I just want to say, I don't know that I was aware of Sondheim then, but I have a feeling we had the same influences, but I don't know what his influences were. I don't know. Bernstein for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah.
But anyway, what was interesting though is that I remember that your style, because I was singing all of it, that your style was much more for the singer to perform. My music tended to be like, if there's something that's, I would say, doesn't, I've learned to give more space in it. In the beginning, there was much less space. I was taking up all the space as a composer, leaving very
Huh.
little space for the performer to perform on their own. And yet your music had these long lines, and that would give someone that opportunity to really perform into it.
Interesting. Huh. Yeah, because I do know I would have described what I was writing at the time as angular as well.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but it also goes back to just my love of pop music, like the Beatles and stuff.
Right.
It's like, well, I love rhythm
Right.
and rhythm. Give me rhythm, and it still is a big part of what I enjoy writing.
Mm-hmm.
Sure, but
Yeah, it's funny.
yeah,
It's funny that I mean, it's amazing that we were able to finish that and, do whatever we did with it. And just be like, "Oh, I don't like what you did." Okay, fine. Well, I'm going to finish that and I'll do this, and then just go do it.
and that is a great gift when you have a collaborator where that can happen too.
Right.
So it's like, you go like, yeah, well, that's all right, but I don't know if it's going to fit in the show. And it's like, huh, but not, huh.
Yeah, like let's
I would be
see
like,
what
oh, okay. Yeah.
I want to come back to the
Yeah.
Golden Cage just because I
Oh,
do for a
yes.
minute.
Yeah.
Although I don't know, oh, you just saw it. You just
Yes.
Would you be willing to talk a little bit about what you saw?
Yes. Yes. So, okay, here's the thing. We did it probably back in
It
77,
was
78.
79.
Okay. So that's a long
It
time
was,
ago.
it was.
Long time ago. And so, and the way my memory works, and even musical memory, is things, they just are buried way back there.
Mhm.
So um, things are not at the tip of my musical brain, to the point where when I was doing a solo performing for quite some years, and people would say, "Hey, do that song," I'd go, "Sorry, I don't remember it." I would have had to practice it in order to actually play it, because I just don't remember it. So anyway, with that to say, I'm watching the Golden Cage New York production, loving it, seeing a whole different person besides me playing Boris, and giving it all these different things that I had never even thought of, and sometimes going like, "No, no, no, not that," but mostly just going like, "Oh, well, he's a good actor," and listen to, "Oh yeah, uh-huh," and the beautiful thing, this is what was really beautiful, was all the music was just in there. It's deep in my brain. And as I heard each song, there were a few new pieces that I didn't know, but other things were just like deep in there. And even the lyrics are locked in there. So I know what the next lyric is sometimes. And it was beautiful to hear. And I also just I loved it all over again. I was just so pleased for you and proud of the work you did, and in awe, kind of going like, whoa, back in college you wrote this, and it's just it works, and it's this beautiful little fable of that what would I say, it's so personal in a way. Not that, I don't know which character you identify with or whatever, but I know
Oh,
in things
yeah.
that I've written, that seem to be fantastical or whatever, um, they are deeply personal for me, even though it
Mhm.
may be fantastical on the surface. It's like,
Mhm.
well, that's basically autobiographical, man.
Right. Yeah, I
And
definitely am feeling that, and it's I I talk about it a lot in therapy, and I find it's almost like each therapy session, I'm really surprised to kind of pull out, um, like I said to my therapist today, "Well, I'm in a pickle." And then I was like, "Oh, wait a second. That's a line from the show." And, and 2 weeks ago, I was like, "It's like I'm afraid to toot my own horn." And then I was like, that's in the show too." And just sort of realizing it's almost like this show was a dream that I had just on the cusp of childhood. But it really did take a lifetime, because even though a lot of it was the same, there were things I could not answer, things I could not finish.
yeah, Yeah.
And I love having had a story that it has taken a lifetime to unfold. And to have still had it, at the time, for it to have been a story in the beginning, but for it to take a lifetime to actually understand or open the whole thing. And now, the rest of my life, I'm sure I'll be sort of, oh wow. Like in the middle of the show, there's a moment where Althea and Boris turn to each other, and through the bars of the cage, they sing, all my life I've waited for this moment to believe, for the simple pleasure of belief, all my life. And then they each sing about trust. And it's for reasons I don't know why. I always had it that it should be a cappella, no orchestration with it. And because it is so intimate, it's like everything stops and these two characters let everything go and actually connect. And ever since then, like not ever since then, but like in the last few months, I kind of went like, what actually happens in the end of, the second half of the show? All hell breaks loose, this person falls off the cliff, this person gets locked, and yet it's as if they are inevitably, and everything that happens is what leads to their transformation. And I was wondering when did that happen in the play? And I realized it happens in that moment, in the moment of trust. It's almost like that is a magic moment. It only has to happen for a split second, but when there is trust, everything opens. That's what unlocks. And after that, it's like it's inevitable and unimportant what happens. It will gallop towards conclusion. It will gallop towards transformation.
Wow. You could be a dramaturg. You got it.
What do you mean? What do you mean?
Well, just because I think you're right. In terms of if you were to analyze the play and what's the point that grabs the audience, that moment of trust and that them looking through the bars and really trusting each other is the part that touches me the most.
Yes. Yeah.
It's like, oh wow, and you really, uh, Boris at that point isn't conniving. He wants to get in that cage, but at that point he's dropped all that and he's just going, yeah.
Yeah.
And she's blindly trusting him, not knowing that
Right.
there might be some conniving. But it's just that moment is like, okay, great. But she falls, yeah. I mean, then
Well, I
it
mean,
all,
it's interesting because afterwards there is this beautiful moment of trust where they are both like, "Oh my God, I trust this person. Oh my God, this person trusts me. This is so." And after that, he becomes outrageously conniving. After that, she becomes outrageously resistant. And yet, and then he does something violent, and then she dies, and then he becomes locked into the cage. I mean, everything horrible happens after that. They become horrible in a way, and horrible things happen, and yet that is their transformation. And I
yes.
almost feel as if they're burning off something at that point. And I don't know why this is so important to me, other than to realize, to start looking for that moment of trust and to be willing to have that moment of trust and to be willing to trust that moment of trust, even if what happens afterwards looks crazy.
Yeah. I haven't studied Joseph Campbell, but I remember seeing he talked about Star Wars 20, 30 years ago on TV. He was being interviewed for something, and he said, the Star Wars epic journey is this hero's journey. And I went, huh. I mean, I like Star Wars, and I thought about it, and it does resonate, that the idea of like where Luke has to trust the Force in the first movie a little bit, but later he's got Yoda saying, "Nope, not enough, not enough," and that burning away of all your own self doubts or grandiose thoughts of yourself. Everything has to burn away so that you're just left, I don't know, like a naked newborn babe and really ready to move through the world. And I don't, again, if Joseph Campbell is listening from up there or wherever. I'm not an expert, but it does feel to me that yes, that's the essence of a story of watching someone go through something, and and discovering where that quivering, beautiful part of being alive is at, beyond the ability to do things, or what you think of yourself, or what you think poorly of yourself. All that stuff needs to burn away, and and we get there hopefully. I know I feel really grateful to be older.
Yeah.
Um, it's sure my back hurts, blah 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 blah. Older, so what?
Hmm.
It's really so nice to be much more aware and conscious of myself and with the world, and grateful for things, stuff
Mm.
that I just had no way of understanding when I was younger. And and my youth was not wasted. Like like I was saying, when I was acting with you in Dream of
Mm.
Waking, oh, I
Mm.
don't regret any of that.
Mm.
And I couldn't have done anything more at the time. I was I was that guy, and a lot of stuff needed to burn away. And now that it has, it's like, oh, this is even better to be older, and just more alert and alive to the world. I like it.
Well, that's beautiful, Gunnar. It's just been so wonderful to talk to you about this and through this, just to have a reason to have this conversation. And
Yeah.
I always kind of hate this question, but I want to know, like, what's next? What are you going to use that part of you, that newly old, you know, that part of you? What?
Well, one of the things that burned away, and I was so surprised, really surprised, because when I had my career with the Bobs, this a cappella group for 10 years, being on stage was what saved me. I was in my 20s and early 30s then. And if I didn't have an audience loving me every other night, uh, would I still be here? I don't know. I've never felt really suicidal, but it's just like that carried me through a really tough 20s and 30s. I just wasn't, there wasn't much of me there in a grounded way. So having an audience love me every other night, that just took care of me and carried me through that. And then once I got through that, I found out what depression was like, and that burned away a lot. But I didn't like it. It was hard. And then uh, coming out of that, other experiences, writing for video games, performing by myself, solo. Um, yes, that was great. Oh, let me tell you this, because this is, does this apply? Yes, it does. I was doing music for families, which includes young children and sometimes very young children. So my very first gig down at McCabe's in LA as this children's performer, I'm like, and McCabe's is this great place. I'm going, all right, here I am. And but they don't have chairs set up. They just have a big carpet, and all these kids, like 2 years old, kids that are too young for music, are just making noise and crawling around. And I'm halfway through my first song, and this guy picks up his kid and walks him off the stage, walks him out of the room. And I'm like, oh no, I'm losing the audience. Crap, I'm losing them. And this is just a total meltdown, and fire alarms going off inside. And then, thank God, some little part of me said, look, the kid probably needs to go to the bathroom. Let go of that one. I went, oh yeah, oh yeah, just going to the bathroom. Okay. So I got through the show, but I was just so hyper aware of I needed people to just pay attention, and if they didn't pay attention, I'd be mad at them or something. And finally, after a few years of working through as a solo performer, I went, what if I just show up and sing the songs and share?
Mm.
And then whatever they give me back is just gravy. And I went, I'd never known that. It was always this, you got to pay attention. You better pay attention kind of thing almost, which was so difficult. But I found a place where I could perform and just give the songs. And then I got this really nice love, and I wasn't uptight anymore. And then what happened years later, and this is sometime after my son was born, probably when he was 5 or something, the need to be on stage just left me. And I was totally flabbergasted because I said, well, maybe it's because the gigs lately haven't been good. So I went down to Santa Cruz to a favorite jazz club there and did a show there. One of my favorite clubs. That must be the problem. And I'm there, and I didn't want to disappoint the audience, so I gave a good show. But I went, I guess I just don't want to do this anymore. And that allowed me tons of room to be a father. Other things, my mom needs help. She's older and stuff, and I don't know, my wife needs extra stuff. Her mother's getting older. There's all these things that I need to do just as a person, and somehow all that ambition and need has burned away, and I have time to do these other things, and it's really great. And at the same time, I still love writing music, and it's just something I do right now whenever I have time. It's kind of a spare time thing. I love it. And if the phone rings and someone says, I got a job, I need music, it's like, okay, I'll make room for that. But I'm in a place where all these things are easy going. So that's the things that have burned away and left time for this. And I kind of get excited about writing, making some more albums and stuff like that. Maybe another musical, although that's hard work. But as you might know.
Well, it's interesting as I was listening to you talk about that, and I was thinking, your personality became such a part of this character, and who we were, became such a part of this show. And then as you were, and one of the questions I've always had that I haven't answered is, what happens after Alfia and Boris fly off? What is their life then? And as you were talking, I was thinking, oh, this is the answer to that question. They just do what they love to do. They fly, they sing, they feel the rhythm, the music, the rapture as you're reeling, the feeling.
Yes. And all that burning that gives it the dynamic of him just wanting to have that cage and her just dreading being in the same place every day. All of that is part of what I had when I was young, and which is not wrong. But at a certain point, it's time to move on, right? And your play is expressing that.
Wow. Gunnar, thank you so much. I mean, I really appreciated this conversation. I don't know
it's a
what it
pleasure.
will mean to other people, but thank you for going on this. Thank you for being on this journey of my life with me. And thank you for just this conversation.
Oh, I always love talking with you. I love you.
I love you too,
You're
Gunnar.
great.
It has been so much fun. I don't want to end, but let's do this again.
Sure.
Right, because we're going to talk about patterns. We're going to get on this thing sometime and talk about patterns.
Yeah. Sure.
Okay.
Because yeah. That's how music comes to me. That's what I love.
That's beautiful. Well, anyone who's watched this, thank you so much for just being here and watching two friends talk about an experience in their lives that is now available to others, but what the background of that and what our lives have been and what it meant to have something to do together, something to create together, and something to connect us for our whole lives, and to open us up to what might happen next. I mean, this conversation just opens up more. Thank you. Thank you, Gunnar. Thank you so much. Thank you, Ren, for being here and just clicking things when needed. And thank you to everybody who's been part of the Golden Cage and part of this conversation. And I always love hearing your comments. and farewell. See you